What's up everyone? Welcome to the video. Today I have a pretty straightforward video for you guys. I want to talk about 5 things that I've done and you can do in order to improve your 40-yard dash time other than sprinting. Because obviously sprinting is the #1 thing you should be doing at the core of your training if you're trying to get faster. I wanted to narrow it down to 5 things because I thought anything more than that would be a little too much. I wanted to keep this video short and digestible enough for you to take home and understand and apply the things that I talk about. I also want to say I plan on going into more detail on these 5 things in future videos, but I will do my best to give my best keys for you generally, as well as keep this video short enough so you can understand it all. But really quick, if you're new, my name is Austin. I make videos like this as well as vlog my training. My goal through these videos is to help you improve your athletic performance. So if you're into that sort of thing, hit subscribe. So tip #1 is use the optimal start technique. The reason why I say optimal is because this isn't a one-size-fits-all type of thing for everyone. Obviously, everyone has different limb lengths, different leg sizes, body types, and we're going to have to figure out what works best for us in a general sense and try to make the start technique tailored to our anatomy as much as possible. So to give you an example, this is how I do it. Dominant, so I start with my right foot and I go start at the line, the red line's the start, heel toe again, and then take my other back leg and stick it out to the side. You want a shoulder width stance. Come forward, almost like I'm getting into a 4-point stance. Trying to keep a mental note of the angle of my shins. I want my shins as parallel to the ground as possible. Digging my toes into the turf, pushing back, loading my butt up while keeping my back flat. My right hand goes down the line as almost like a kickstand, so when it comes up, I shoot forward. Here, the back hand goes back to the pocket or by the butt. So it looks like this. Now that is how I currently set up for the start. I feel that that works best for me. I do plan on making a future video discussing what you can do other than that, as well as other tips and tricks to give yourself options for a better start technique if you're a guy that can't get into these positions like that. And that also does not mean I will never alter my start technique. I feel like this technique works best for me at the present time, so that's kind of what I'm sticking with as I continue to improve my 40-yard dash time. So that brings me to my next point, or #2, which is something I feel is the most overlooked thing on the list, and that's mobility. Mobility is so important. If you're missing end ranges of hip, knee, and ankle mobility, then you're definitely not as fast as you could be. You're totally leaving some potential on the table. A good place for people to start, in my opinion, is hip extension and flexion. These are 2 key components of running. Obviously hip flexion, going up with your knee up to your chest, and hip extension with your knee going behind your back on the foot strike. I think a lot of people who, especially for those of you who are students that sit at a desk a majority of the day, you're going to be running into some restrictions just based on what you spend the most time of doing during the day. To use myself as an example, I sit at a desk all day at work, and I am definitely missing end ranges of hip flexion extension when I get out of work, because it's just inevitable. It's something that we all have to kind of deal with. And the 2 mobilizations that I will show on the screen are definitely stars that you should put in your book. I really suggest doing banded hip flexion as well as banded hip extension and the couch stretch. These 3 are 3 that I always go to. I alternate between the banded hip extension and the couch stretch because they're both hip extension, and some days I don't feel as tight or feel tight in a certain way. The banded hip flexion is definitely good because you're biasing your hip crease and you're allowing the joint to get pulled into the right place in the socket, and you're allowing yourself to stretch your hamstring as well in this. I think these are 3 best bang for your buck as far as hip mobilizations go. I will put links to them in more detail in the description below. These mobilizations especially should improve your average stride length. So essentially that's going to decrease the distance of the race you're really running. Being able to get into the optimal ranges of motion also is going to clear up any restrictions that are dysfunctioning your joints and muscles from creating the most torque and power as possible. Sprinting is one of the most powerful and explosive movements that you as an athlete can do. And I think a lot of times athletes don't create the most torque and power with each stride they take because of mobility restrictions in either the ankle, the knee, or the hip. Basically, these restrictions are inhibiting you from creating as much power as you possibly can. Obviously, sprinting is something you definitely want to maximize your power output in. Lastly, if you look at some of the world's fastest athletes, their mobility and ability to get into these positions is what separates from those who really aren't very fast. Mobility allows you to sprint properly as well as minimizes the risk of injury, something that obviously nobody wants. Now, for the first actual training suggestion and coming in at number 3, I have plyometrics. Plyos are often forgotten and pushed to the side in favor of heavy strength and barbell training. Now, I think that plyos, in fact, are more important because they're also more specific to sprinting because they utilize a stretch shortening cycle, as well as sprinting is probably the fastest form of a plyo you can do. Plyos like bounding, drop jumps, weighted jumps should all have a place in your training. All of those are important movements. When these movements are done with the correct intent, you will definitely see an effective use for them in your training and see a carryover to them to sport play. Plyos, in my opinion, are best done with low reps. It just maximizes your power output per set, as well as eliminates fatigue from impeding your performance. My final tip when doing plyos is to do what you have to do to get creative with these exercises in order to enhance them. The problem we run into with plyos is that it's hard for them to be quantifiable. You aren't using weight or you're using very little weight. You want to be able to progress these exercises in terms of scaling them if they're too hard for you to start with, or adding things to them in order to make them harder as you progress. My favorite example of this is going from a depth drop to a depth drop with a jump to a depth drop with a Viking toss. And I think that this is definitely a movement that I think a lot of athletes can benefit from, but a lot of athletes, am I going to start them with this movement? Probably not. They probably need to get the landing mechanics down first before they learn how to jump after they land, and then before they learn how to jump and explode with a medicine ball. It just makes more sense that way. So coming in at number 4, I have doing the right amount of strength training. The reason why I say doing the right amount of strength training is because a lot of athletes, it's easier for them to go crazy with getting in the gym, getting strong, strapping up the belts, knee sleeves, and just going full power lifter. But we tend to forget that powerlifting isn't very specific to sprinting. Powerlifting, or I should really say strength training in general, at the end of the day, it's cool to lift heavy, it's cool to get strong, but it does have very diminishing returns when it comes to training for speed, training for power. You're going to definitely be able to improve the amount of force that you can put into the ground on each stride and foot strike, but to what extent do we just really become better at the lift, just technically more efficient? I think that you run into a lot of problems with athletes who find ways to get stronger without actually making their muscles stronger. And I think that that is something that should be done. However, that's not gonna help you get faster. It's not gonna have any carryover. As coaches, we want our athletes to be, just generally speaking, strong, lean athletes. I know that's pretty vague, but coming from somebody who is a strength athlete, it's easy to get lost in the sauce in the gym and be chasing PRs and tend to forget about all the other facets of getting faster, producing power. Essentially what I'm saying here is make an emphasis on strength training, but not at the expense of anything else on this list, as well as your program sprint training. As for movements and exercises to train, my general rule of thumb is keep them specific. Trap bar deadlifts, front squats, power cleans, these are all gold stars to have in your programming. Get comfortable training movements that force you to produce power and force using a positive shin angle, or in other words, your knee moving forward towards the front of your foot. Obviously, you want to make form and technique a priority, but definitely go heavy. You want to get stronger. That's the whole point of this. You want to produce more force. As for upper body, don't be afraid to bench. Don't be afraid to gain some muscle mass. Looks can be deceiving. Aesthetically speaking, coaches look for jacked athletes. Athletes that look, just the part is definitely going to turn heads, and it's going to make you stand out if you're going to some type of combine or showcase. Coaches see a guy with big arms or a lot of upper body muscle mass and they think two things. A, you're a genetic freak, or B, you work your ass off in the gym. Both are the things that you want to be recognized for. Lastly, when it comes to strength training, have a plan. Don't come to the gym and just try to come up with random workouts on the spot. I see a lot of athletes do this, especially in their off season. I can't believe that athletes do that in their off season, because You want to progress weekly. You're going into a whole new season next year, and you're coming up with workouts on the spot that you probably saw some athlete do on TV. Like, you want to be able to progress weekly. You want to be able to build off the prior week's work. And if you don't, it kind of all goes to waste and you don't get anywhere. You kind of stay not strong. Create your own periodization plan or find a program online. There's millions of programs online, whether they're free or you have to pay for it, who cares? Also, it's good to note that you shouldn't just try to look for the best program, although there are programs more optimal than others, but I just don't think there is one best program for everybody. If there was, we'd all be doing it. Find one that you can follow through with and stick to all the way to the end. I also want to mention at some point, I'll probably create my own program for athletes who are looking to get faster, so be on the lookout for that too. Finally, at number 5, I have lowering your body fat percentage. Some of you who are watching this probably already are lean athletes, and that's okay, but for those of you who aren't, this is a big tip. Your excess body fat is basically working against you, holding you down, slowing you down, working almost as like a weighted vest that you just can't take off. Improving your speed is very related to improving your strength relative to your body weight. Essentially, this means you're trying to move your body through space as fast as possible. So in order to do this, you're gonna start cutting body weight and maintaining lean muscle mass. Plain and simple. Can you get faster at your current body weight? Yeah, but will it help if you're leaner? Definitely. Also, of the fastest athletes in the world, they all have one thing in common. They're all pretty much shredded. A lot of them have single-digit body fat percentages. If you look at the bigger guys, like in football, the bigger you get, usually the slower they get. Or I should say, the worse their body composition is, the slower they get. Just as a viewer, as a bystander watching, that's kind of what I notice. And I think that with the science applied that you need to improve your relative body strength, it's important to be a lean athlete in order to be fast. I currently do coach athletes with If It Fits Your Macros. If you're interested, be sure to shoot me a DM or a personal message, and I would love to help you get started and get on track to getting a leaner physique so you can get faster that way. So for this video, that's all I got. Stay tuned for the coming weeks as I'm going to be coming out with a series on speed and how I think that it's best for athletes to improve their speed and get faster. So be sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and thanks again for watching.